I'm on a conference call for Nvidia, which is a stock that I've recommended since it was at about $10. It's at 500. And one of the things that happened in 2018 was that people used their cards to mine. On the conference call, they talked about how in March, they're going to produce cards that are just for Ethereum mining. So the two questions I have is, one, their cards, obviously, these are not swappable. You don't just say, oh, I'll do Ethereum, I'll do Bitcoin. And two, why is it in the interest of an Nvidia to do that? And who's buying it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions in there. First is there's a specialized type of computer. It's basically an ASIC miner that is specifically focused on Bitcoin mining. What the Ethereum network and other networks will use is a GPU, right? The graphic processing units. And so what you can do is there is some level of variability in terms of if you have a GPU-based miner, you can basically switch between a handful of these different GPU-based type mining protocols. But Bitcoin requires these ASICs. And so that tends to be kind of where you get the difference. And these businesses are set up to do the GPUs, right? The kind of holy grail eventually is going to be that somebody sets up an advanced computing system or a center. And what they say is, hey, I don't care if I'm doing 3D rendering. I don't care if I'm doing some sort of computation for self-driving cars, mining some sort of cryptocurrency, whatever it is. I just do advanced computing and I have one set of hardware and I can kind of do all of it. I don't know how quick that's going to happen, but when we get to that world, then what it becomes really interesting is then you get a real free market dynamic at play that's going to push the price of a lot of the other types of advanced computing needs down. And when you start to all of a sudden say, hey, we can now do 3D rendering, or we can do stuff for self-driving cars or other types of DNA sequencing or whatever, and we can push those costs down and lower the friction. Imagine all of the innovation kind of breakthroughs we're going to have when you just lower the cost to actually do some of this stuff. And so I think that's like a big piece of it. Nvidia and others like it, I think, are in a really good spot because they understand hardware, software, and advanced computing. And so when you look at the Bitcoin mining businesses, they got to do Bitcoin mining, right? That there's no ability for them to kind of go into the other fields. And so I think that's really where you're seeing a separation between the two different types of hardware really dictate kind of what you can do with that hardware.
Well, I mean, should I be buying Ethereum?
Look, I think that there's a lot of folks who basically look at Ethereum in a couple of different ways. So first is it's important to understand Ethereum and Bitcoin are going after two completely different things, right? Okay. Bitcoin is going after kind of the world reserve currency, right? It wants to disrupt gold. It wants to disrupt central banks. And it wants to be this programmatic, transparent monetary policy. And my opinion and many people in the Bitcoin community is that it's going to achieve that goal, right? And so you can put whatever kind of percentage probability on that, but that's kind of what Bitcoin's going after. Ethereum basically was created by Vitalik Buterin and a few other folks. They wanted to build on top of the Bitcoin network, but they said, hey, this is too difficult. And so we need to go build on something else that has smart contract capabilities, et cetera. And so now we've ended up in this world where Ethereum, the network was built, and there's all kinds of people building applications and various products and services on top of that network. But also we now have a lot of smart contract capabilities on top of Bitcoin and other networks as well. And so what you're going to end up seeing is probably coexistence in this world, right? And a lot of people, they want to think that the world's binary. They want to say, hey, there's going to be one thing to rule everything. But ultimately what we're seeing is we're seeing the market adopt certain things on the Bitcoin network and layer 2 technologies and smart contract type capabilities. But also we're seeing that happen in a very big way on Ethereum. And in what I think is a really interesting areas like what happens if it's just interoperable? So if you're on the Ethereum network, I'm on the Bitcoin network, and we can actually transact with each other in some, interesting way. I don't know where it goes. I'm not a developer in terms of having the technical knowledge to say, hey, here's the exact technology that's going to be the winner. But I do think that the most interesting part for investors is, look, there's a ton of innovation and experimentation happening all across this ecosystem. And the flood of intellectual capital coming into this from the world's best technologists is undeniable. And so it's just, you just got to be in the space, right? You got to have the exposure and you got to start paying attention.
It's funny. I posited on one of these days when this GameStop went to 350 that, look, I know that Nvidia is going to sell the GPUs for Ethereum. Maybe GameStop should be in the business of selling those cards. But you know what? After listening to you, I'm thinking maybe that's not so far-fetched.
Well, look, I mean, if you really think about, so let's talk about GameStop, right? GameStop basically had this incredible run. One of the things that surprised me was there was no sort of capital markets activity, right? There was, as far as I know, there was no debt issued, there was no kind of equity raise at even with the inflated stock price, and so that kind of struck me as like maybe a missed opportunity, or maybe there's something I don't know in terms of why they didn't do it. But the second piece of it that I thought was really interesting is if you believe the kind of pitch from the company, my understanding is they want to go from pure, product retailer in a physical presence. They want to get more into gaming, IP. They want to have a subscription product, like all that kind of stuff. That's not really that far. If you got people coming into a physical location, you can now say to them, hey, we know you're into games, but you're also very technical. You're also into kind of these virtual worlds. Why don't we sell you some sort of virtual skin? Or why don't we sell you, some sort of cryptocurrency that's inside of a game, right? That isn't necessarily a token. What happens when all of a sudden you can take, a sword that you get in one game and you can bring it to another world? Like, I don't know where it goes, but that all feels like that's right up their alley.
Right. That's why this fellow, he's very bright guy, obviously, Ryan Cohen, I'm sure he's watching him. I'm telling you, look, I love Chewy. He is the co-founder of Chewy, but that is what I'm talking. You have now put it far more articulate than I was and have been, but that's what I'm talking about. Make the game about, make it a contest, make there be e-gaming, and the winners are paid in a currency that you and I trust. Worldwide currency with worldwide games. And I don't want to mess with dollars. I need something that can store value. It's fairly funny when you look at, I remember once when I was taking economics class at college, they said, listen, all you have to do is every 7 years, that your money's cut in half with the dollar. I mean, why do I sit here and just say, you know what, I'll just accept that? We would never accept the idea that every 7 years a car's worthless. Or it's depreciated 50%. Or how about a home? Oh, in 7 years, you got to throw that home away. I mean, it's supposed to be our principal asset. And so all of these things are made it someone like me. It's like an upside down world. But someone who's younger has the privilege of not having thought about the way that we've been stuck with.